Hi, my name is Kevin Furman. I'm here to talk about 10 steps to unbelievable rolls. This is step 1, also called the free stroke. So I'm going to get into what that means and what it's all about and how to use it and how to develop a roll out of it. So really quickly in the introduction I went over a technique. So if you haven't seen that, please go back and look at it. But I'll go over really fast. We talked a lot about the fulcrum point being a thumb pointing with the stick across from this first knuckle with your index finger and not wrapping that around. I went into why at the earlier video, go check it out. And the control actually happens with all three of the back three fingers, not at the fulcrum point. So if you're not hip to that, please go back and check that out, why, and get to that point. I'm going to be talking about match grip with this whole thing. So those of you that play traditional grip, that'll be a later series, but right now it's just going to be match grip or German grip. So that's the approach. It works really great because both right and left hand do the same thing. So left-handers, same information, etc., etc. So here's the deal with step 1. We want to work on the free stroke. And the whole idea with the free stroke is to get rid of squeezing the stick. And that seems to be the main problem. People try to play rolls, they tend to squeeze the stick at the fulcrum with their thumb and their first finger, either hiding that fact by their fingers not really touching the stick at the bottom, or not at all, like they're spread out and pinkies flying and all that stuff. So we want to get rid of any of that stuff, and really all the control should come back from these three fingers. Now, to get to that point where you're not squeezing anymore, we're going to use the free stroke to help train your muscles. So I'm going to do something that I talked about, i.e. having fingers on the stick. Now we're actually going to kind of let go with a little bit and let the stick be free to move, and that's the idea, is to not squeeze it and hinder its movement. You want it to move quickly and freely. So hence the name, free stroke. Okay. So how it works is this. I'll just show you and then I'm going to go into an explanation. So free stroke looks like this. Okay, so I'll do a couple times so you can kind of check it out. Okay, yeah, that's pretty free. No, just kidding. All right, so you got, the idea is you throw the stick down and the stick itself only pops back up. So I'm not picking the stick up at all. It's popping back up, and depending on how hard I throw it, depending on how quick it bounces back up. So if you want it to go really fast, you can throw it really hard. Or if you want to, do it slowly, I suppose you could. We're going to work on quick, because that'll help with the rolling thing. So what you really want to do with it is this. Make sure your fulcrum point is great. Leave a big gap between your thumb and your first finger, right? So not wrapping your fingers around here. You actually want to leave a gap there, because the stick needs to be free to move like this. By the way, that is something I would suggest you practice. So let me give you a front view of what I'm doing here. All right, so no back three fingers on the stick right now, just the fulcrum, okay? And you want to barely hold on enough so that the stick is free to rotate in your hand on that fulcrum point, okay? Super important that that's able to be done, because that's how the free stick works. So that's why you don't want your index finger wrapped around. If it is wrapped around at all, it won't work. It'll always do stuff like that, where it'll kind of bounce around and wiggle and not really be fully done. So get rid of that finger wrapped around there, and you'll be able to do this free stroke much easier. Okay, so here's some other points to really watch. When you do the free stroke, you throw your hand down, okay? You're going to throw your hand down like this, right? And your fingers will actually be pointed towards the ground. Okay, so if you throw your wrist down without a stick and just kind of open your hand, that's what happens. Okay, fingers point to the ground. In the free stroke, same thing, same deal. Your back three fingers, or actually all fingers, really are pointed towards the ground. That's what you're going for. Okay, so that's sort of the deal with that. And most people get that in their head, but what happens is, watch my hands. Okay, and this is the big thing. You want to watch your hand, not the stick. Stick's not all that important, really. Your hand is where the action is. So make sure your position and everything's working right. So here's what most people I see do when they first try this. They'll do something like this. So they start great, and then they'll do this. Like they're trying to pull the stick back up because they're so worried about the stick coming up that they have to pull it up with their hands. So they end up with their fingers pointing straight out as opposed to down. There's variations on that, like wiggling your hand around so it doesn't, or whatever. Really, it's pretty simple. It's just like throwing your hand down. There should be one wrist motion. Your fingers pop open and the stick bounces up on its own. Okay, if that's not happening, if you're doing like a couple of motions to get it, to come back, you probably are wrapped around here with your index finger, or you're trying to help it some. Okay, so don't help it, just let the stick come back up. If it doesn't, that means you might be squeezing still or something. If you squeeze the stick at all, you're going to stop the motion. You want to let the stick be free, hence this thing again, right? It should be able to do this without any extra help. Okay, so The other thing that people will tend to do is well, things you can check, I guess, is that wrapped around thing. If you really are doing that, and you don't think you are, here's something to check to make sure. Okay, if my finger is wrapped around and I do a free stroke and I kind of unwrap it on the way out, right? So I get my hand in the right position, but I started with my fingers wrapped around it, but I yet open them up to get my fingers down. What happens then, if you look at the fulcrum point, middle of my thumb is now crooked compared to my index finger knuckle. And you want those should stay straight across from each other. That shouldn't unravel, i.e., unwrap and be crooked. So you really, really want to watch that. That's crucial, and really be critical about that one. Watch your hand very carefully. If it's crooked at all, that means you're wrapping that finger around and it's going to get in your way. Doesn't mean you can't roll. It just means it's going to get in your way and you're going to limit your potential for rolls. Okay? And another one is if you point your finger at all, if you're trying to, okay, I'm not going to wrap it around and you point your finger, like you go the other way. If you try to do this, it'll just fall out of your hand, so that's not going to work either. So it has to be in that first knuckle, across from the thumb, and your thumbnail, the middle of your thumbnail across from that first knuckle is really kind of where that's at. Okay, and then if the stick does drop, that's actually not a bad thing, because that means you're not squeezing, you're holding it more loosely. So don't try to drop the stick, but if it does, it's not a big deal. I mean, it's a stick. It might bruise your ego a little bit, but it's not going to matter, and whatever, pick it up and do it some more. So those are the main points about the free stroke that you want to do, and then things to avoid. Also, here's what I recommend. For a week, you just want to do one hand at a time, and just reset to starting position, stick up in the air, straight up. Right, you do your free stroke, let it stop, and you pick it back up, put your fingers back on. Oh, there is another one. Don't do it with your arm. So when you do it once, don't turn it into this. Okay, so it's not about trying to do it a lot. It's just the motion itself and feeling the stick move in your hand. So it's not about how many times you do it per se, it's how well you do it. So look at quality, not quantity right now. But for 30 seconds, practice with your, say, your strong hand. I'm right-handed, so it'd be my right hand. Okay, so you do your right hand. And then what you want to do is then practice your weak hand twice as much. So do a minute's worth of free strokes with your weak hand, i.e. me, left hand. Okay, if you're left-handed, that would be your right hand, obviously, right? So I generally recommend that. Our weak hand, we need to develop more. So I tend to do things twice as much with the weak hand than the right hand, and that tends to help even it out quicker, sooner, obviously, and for very obvious reasons. So for 30 seconds each day, strong hand, and then for a minute each day, weak hand. Do free strokes. If you do that for a week, you should have a good start on the free stroke and basically know what you're doing. All right, hope that made sense. If it didn't, if you have any questions, please email me, kfurman@furmanmusic.com. Thanks for checking out the video series. We'll see you at step 2.